Good morning, guys. We have Bob Trait from the Colonial Theater in Pennsylvania, and he is going to give us a lot of insight about his side of the business.
It sounds weird to say I'm a graduate from the film of communications from Penn State University. I was kind of a legacy Penn Stater. My parents went to Penn State, and I was always pushed to go there. But they wanted me to early on pursue a law career, and I kept finding myself drawn to theater, making skits, doing live television, making films, and I eventually convinced my parents to let me pursue the School of Communications. And I pursued two different facets at Penn State. I pursued production, and I pursued film theory. So I started to study why movies, have the impact that they do, why movies affect people. And then I was looking at, I was learning production. I was learning how to make a film from the ground up on film, actual film,
Oh, wow.
which sounds weird, but I kind of feel like I may have been one of the last students at Penn State to actually work on uh, 16 millimeter. Like we had just gotten this computer that could edit your film once it was transferred digitally, and there was only one of them. Um, so some of us were shooting at the same time on video and 16 so that we could edit it ahead of time and then cut it. So there was lots of little things like that that I felt were very outdated at Penn State. I had just come from a high school that had a full television studio, and I felt like actually going to school was a year. Like I kind of felt like I took steps back. So I'd already been a producer of a live TV series every week. I had done skits. 2, 3 years into college, did like a Kids in the Hall type thing where I had won local awards with a group of gentlemen. And I felt like college was this production side of this is I learned all this already. So I really got into theory, as well as the fact that it's very expensive to buy 16 millimeter film, get it developed, and then shoot an entire movie on it. Basically, I didn't realize at the time, but I was basically learning to be a journalist in a lot of ways. So
Wow.
when I got out of college, I found myself moving to Philadelphia with my girlfriend, and she had gotten a job, and she had studied to be a journalist. She was kind of my first teacher as to saying like what I was doing right, what I was doing wrong. And I started to write for a website that was a science fiction website called Mania. And it was just science fiction, fantasy, anime. And then within 3 or 4 years, I had actually become a regular journalist with them, a photographer, and then I ended up managing the website for about 4 years. In the boom of the Ain't It Cool News, we were, I'd say about like 3, 4 years after Ain't It Cool News had really kind of exploded, and then there were websites everywhere. We weren't during the .com boom. We actually survived much longer than that, and had a element to our website that was a lot like Facebook. We had a community, and it lasted a long time, but eventually, advertising dollars, what they are, they canceled the site. So I kind of found myself at the same time, the area in which I had moved to here in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, there was an old movie theater. So I went in a couple times, saw some movies, and this little old guy, his name is Ted. He gets up and he talks about the Mummy, the 1932 Mummy,
Yeah.
and gave me all this information about the movie. And I was like, wow, I never thought of the movie in that way. So I went up to the programming director at the time and I said, hey, I have a film degree from Penn State. I write for a website and I do a lot of work and stuff about movies. And I would like to get up and basically do the Turner Classic Movie Host thing every week. And she said, okay, that's great. That brings a new element to our theater. And I think the first movie I introduced was it was Charade. And I had never seen it, which I feel ashamed to say that now, but I had never seen Charade. I had no idea it was the greatest Hitchcock movie that Hitchcock never made. Um, but I did my research on it, got up, talked about the
Yeah.
film, and then came back the following and did My Fair Lady. And I did that for the next, I'd say, 2 or 3 years. And in that time, they asked me to join the Classic Film Committee. And it was a bunch of, I believe I was 35 at the time. And I was it was a bunch of older guys, all 50s up.
Yeah.
And uh, I was constantly asking them, like, why can't we show The Thing? 1982, it's a classic. And they said, well, classic movies are usually from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I was like, oh, okay. So I laid out a full month for
It was
them.
classic to you.
Yeah, they were, yeah, classic to me. That's the age difference. So I think I laid out 4 months for
Yeah.
them. And these were suggestions, and they loved them all. So I kind of quickly earned their respect. And then I kind of came back to the programming director at the time and I said, look, The Thing is a classic. Blade Runner is a classic. The one they did agree on was Clockwork Orange, but Clockwork Orange is not a Sunday afternoon kind of movie. So she said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to show these kind of movies after 9 o'clock on a Friday night. And that spawned the First Friday Fright Night, which we just celebrated our 15th anniversary. And we run a classic, well, a cult or a classic horror movie, usually from the 80s.
What were your thoughts between the film and the video that is now the staple of all movie theaters, right? Or all movie making, so to speak.
My biggest criticism of film school at the time was that we weren't focusing on story. We were focusing on the how to load the cameras, light scenes, get it developed, and then what you did. What would you do if the developer screwed up your movie? You'd have to shoot it all over again. So I finally got into a screenwriting course about 2 years in, and I was like, this should been besides if you didn't know movies, and they should almost make you take a test. This is the first class you should take. It's how to tell a story. And unfortunately, I can't remember his name, but my first screenwriting teacher did win the Academy Award for a independent film, or it was a documentary. I wish I could remember what his name was. I could draw you a picture of what he looked like, but I couldn't remember. He literally brought the Oscar with him whenever he went somewhere.
Wow.
But he focused on story over like the technical know-how of actually putting film into a camera and shooting it. And I had already done a lot of that technical side in high school. I
Yeah.
had editing bays, go out and shoot, and the more you shoot, the more you have to play with, the more angles you can get. And I just felt like that college in a lot of ways was a backward step that I did not need. And some of my friends who I was in the comedy troupe with, one of them just went to college for 2 semesters and he said, no, this isn't it. I'm out. And he went to New York and became an actor. And now he's an actor in LA. Yeah, because he was like, this is all, why do I have to study, you know, dramatic theory and take acting classes? Like, and when I was done, my cousin, who's a writer and producer in LA, asked me to come out and just watch or say, hey, you want to see how a movie's made? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I came out and I stayed for a month and I ended up becoming a PA, a stand in, and an extra. And I learned more in a week than I learned in college at all.
What are your thoughts of the film quality versus the new quality that we have these days with our digital media?
There are times when I'm watching movies now, there are times you can really tell the difference. The super hyper surreal, it feels like I'm watching a video game. I really don't care for it. And
Um,
as much of it, as a pain as it is, I know to shoot on film, when you have people like Tarantino and Nolan who are still shooting on, you really see the difference. And I feel like you're in another place and that you're actually watching a movie. There are times where I understood, like Danny Boyle doing 28 Days Later, to shoot it digitally and do a whole film. And I watch that. I love 28 Days Later. I watch it now. It looks awful to me. It doesn't look like I'm witnessing anything real. It looks like a really old video game on a PlayStation 2. When I'm watching a movie, I want to feel like I'm in another place, another time, another setting. Movies should be held at another regard. It's just another canvas in which to paint a story. And when it's digital, it just does not look like a real story. It just looks like it was almost like an easy way out.
So do you think that the quality of digital cinema has not caught up yet with the film cinema?
I don't think it has. And there's, we're going to see some of these movies 10, 15 years down the road and what is endured. And, unfortunately, as technology gets better and better, um, I think there's such an emphasis on cleaning it up and making it look better. And if you can go back and do that with original negatives and such, I don't think that's necessary. I think the film should stand as it is. And the more that you clean up the technology, I think the more of the strings and the makeup and the sets that's not stone, that's styrofoam that's cut and painted to look like stone.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
I that's ruining the magic. The more the better the technology gets, and there are people that don't care. There are people just like, I go to the movies, I turn my brain off for 2 hours. I'm not one of those people.
How much the quality does the end consumer consume? Like, do they care about a digital film versus a film, or do they not? Because you are getting first hand in the movie theater. Like, do you hear some comments when they're coming out, or do they discuss it with you? And what are your thoughts on it?
My current position here at the Colonial is we can still do 35 millimeter projections here. So we do see a huge difference in showing a movie on film and then the same movie digitally. We did Argento's Suspiria. We did it on film, and the same night at the same time we did it digitally, restoration, just so that people could see either one if they wanted to go see it. And more people sat in on the old 35 millimeter print.
Wow.
And that's also, we had a lot of phone calls here for Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. We were very close to getting it on 35, but it's such a considerable cost. We have to have a projectionist up there, we have to pay him by the hour. Whereas in a digital format, we can just download it to our projectors and then put it in any screen. We would literally only be able to run Oppenheimer on one screen 3 hours, and that's it. And then bring in, either get another projectionist or pay him for the whole day. So we might have run it once or twice a day, but the ends don't justify the means because we're not going to make as much money.
Yeah.
One person shows up, we've already lost money.
Yeah.
So that in that same vein, IMAX 70 millimeter, or I'm sorry, 70 millimeter was
Yeah.
selling out at the only place I could do it here. But how many of those film aficionados really just want to see the version of the movie that way? I sat through The Hateful Eight on 70 millimeter because that's how I wanted to see it. But I
Yeah.
also knew that may be the only time ever that I would get to see that film in 70 millimeter, let alone on film, unless I went to the New Beverly.
Yeah.
So there is an audience for it, but the general audience who came to see Barbie, like not one person said, "Wow, didn't you get it on film?" We had numerous calls for Oppenheimer on 70 millimeter, which we can't project.
Yeah.
Um, so it is nice to know that from time to time, somebody like Tarantino, Nolan, they will put a movie out on 35 that there is maybe one or two prints. So then even then you're kind of, you still got to hunt and request it. Disney's kind of making prints now every once in a while for directors, if not just a one-off. But it, there's a certain audience for it. It's an audience that already owns the movie 5 times over. They'll come in and watch Friday the 13th Part 5 on 35 millimeter because one, they may have never seen it that way, or two, they actually want to see it and I think feel it more than
Feel
you
it.
do when you watch it digitally. Like feel the
Yeah.
emotion
Yeah.
of seeing it on 35 the way it was originally released, and we do promote that. We'll say this film is presented in its original format before the movie.
I tried to get into Oppenheimer at the 70 IMAX, and the tickets were just not available. I mean, they were sold out. I was trying to watch this about 2, 3 weeks ago, and the tickets were sold out all the way to the end of August. So
Yeah.
I didn't have that willpower to just keep waiting because everybody was dying to watch that film. I was dying to watch that film, so I didn't. I think I got a lot of I got what I wanted to get out of the film in terms of viewing and watching and so on. But then again, I have not seen the 70 so I cannot tell what I'm missing. Uh,
Right.
and then you come back and you ask yourself that question: does I went there with my wife to watch the film? Did she really understand the difference between a 35 millimeter word, versus
Mhm.
a digital thing? I don't think that the audience these days, especially because we're consuming everything over a digital phone or a computer, they understand the difference. It's becoming more and more norm to watch it on a phone or on a computer. So where does that lead you as a theater in trying to say to yourself, is the theater the future anymore, or will most of the films be consumed on phones and computers or at home?
the the interesting thing is that every once in a while there is that tent pole movie, that movie that people do not want to see on their phone. You can't watch Barbie with 150 people on one cellular device. So we had 13 sellout screenings of Barbie here at the theater.
Mm-hmm.
And that audience fed off the energy of other people. They laughed, they cheered, some cried. It That is the theatrical experience. And you can't do it every time. And it's just one of those things. You're never going to have a full house, but every once in a while those movies come along. Avengers Endgame. I sat in a full theater with that, and there is no replacing. I'm getting chills right now just thinking about that moment
Yeah,
when Captain America says Avengers assemble and catches Thor's hammer, and you know you could just watch that clip and just remember that emotion over and over again. But would I have gotten that same experience if I just watched it at home when it came out on Disney Plus or whatever? No, it was sitting there with a group of people. It's for my generation and yours, we probably remember those first times where we sat in the theater and watched something like Star Wars or Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you get that emotion, that feeling back again. And we provide that here for a lot of people, but is it the memory? Is it seeing it with a group of people? I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. And that's the theatrical experience that I think people thrive for and really enjoy. There's a whole generation of people that never have that. They've watched, you know, I was trying to think of Inception, on your cellular phone. Inception, Inception on your phone is not what I saw in IMAX.
yes.
It's not. And I
Yeah.
tried to watch Inception on my computer. Oh, not my computer, on my big TV. And I got halfway through and I said, this loses everything without that wall bending over,
Right.
coming right at us on screen. It loses it all. I tried to watch the Sandra Bullock movie where she's in space. I tried to watch that again. I absolutely love it. I had the soundtrack where she's the astronaut. And I try to watch it on my TV and I'm like, this loses everything. This is not
Totally.
a theatrical experience anymore because I saw it in IMAX. She was so big and in space, she felt so small in space. And like on my TV, she just taking up a lot of space. And, there's no more space. It's not as
Right.
much fun.
Is theater becoming more of a art gallery or a art museum where a selected few can go and enjoy the moment? And will theater remain, or will theater die out because of the new generation who
Mm.
is so into phones and TVs and computer?
Well, from silent pictures to talkies to TV coming along. Will people even go anymore if they can watch? It always finds a way to reinvent itself. Streaming is great for the films that one you never got to see or that were too small that didn't have the marketing behind it. But for that generation, I just think they need a taste of what that is of the theatrical experience, and they come in. We're starting to see a lot of younger people coming in, and I think it's for movies that they've heard about or that they know that are, these cult movies and they want to experience, that may be a very small group of people. We just showed Old Boy Wednesday night and had 45 people come in to see a movie that's 20 years old, and
Hmm.
people were excited. They were excited to see this film, and it's not streaming anywhere right now, so you
Hmm.
really have to have a copy of it to watch. I think that smaller group of people, if they can do what I'm doing in some way and spread the word to, there is this theatrical experience where you have to turn off your phone, you have to take a break. And that's the hardest part, I think, for the younger generation, is to disengage yourself from the world and just give yourself over to the movie. And we here try to remind people, hey, you just bought a ticket, you just got a 2 hour vacation from everything else in the world, including your phone. Turn it off, put it away, and just give yourself over to the movie. And some people don't want to do that. They want to tweet and text and everything else, that they're there. And it's like, just be here.
Right.
And, maybe it'll take some sort of dramatic event for, the phones to shut down, for people to realize, what they're doing. Um, Streaming service channels, Peacock's, Disney Plus, Paramount, they all get the movie eventually. And sure, it's there. But if there are movies that I regret not seeing in the theater because of whatever reason I didn't get to see it. And you're like, wow, that would have been so much better to see with an audience, or bigger than what it was, or louder than what it was. Like, I can't even fathom watching, Batman 89, on my TV for the first time. It loses everything.
And I think that generation is lacking the experience, or I shouldn't say experience, they're lacking the know-how of the feeling of watching a movie in a movie theater. So since they don't know that, how could they change it?
That's our biggest issue. Like, we do have younger people coming in. Most of the time they come in with their parents. They're brought in for movies. um you know Kicking and screaming into a movie, god, you hope the movie is enough that they enjoy the theatrical experience. But that generation is just, it's so instant, and it's gratification real quick, and then they're moving on to the next thing before they're even done with that. And we just constantly try to give them, when they are here, that feeling of community, and that feeling of that you're seeing something special. And we try to address that constantly. Like, we're going to show The Empire Strikes Back on Sunday, and we're not showing, we could show a Star Wars movie every week for 11 or 12, how many there are, straight weeks. It diminishes that experience. Star Wars should be celebrated, and we're making it special by saying we're only going to do a Star Wars movie like once a year, and that's it. And we're doing them in order, and it's going to take us 9 years to do the whole saga, but we're doing it just once instead of. And I will address the audience and inform them of that this is a unique experience, and it's special to see it this big, this loud, and with this many people. And you hope that they understand that either their parents say it, or that the one movie nerd in their group says, guys, this is beyond the
Oh,
experience.
that is an
This is
amazing
it.
thing that you guys are doing.
Yeah.
That
And
that's
it
amazing.
and I also like to address the audience too. Whenever we show a Disney movie, or a Disney owned movie, we couldn't do that 4 years ago. We decided to run new Disney movies before I started working here. And then we lost 100 years worth of movies from Disney and Fox. And now, and anytime we show something that Disney owns, I am so appreciative of being able to see it as big as possible. And I try to remind all the staff members to say, this is special, that we're showing Big Trouble in Little China, Alien, The Sound of Music, Mary Poppins. This is special, that we're doing The Nightmare Before Christmas all day on the Saturday before Halloween. And the audience is coming out. Like, the people come out for Nightmare Before Christmas has done very well like that. Beetlejuice, not a Disney movie, but Beetlejuice has done very well. And The Princess Bride, we had over 600 people come in and see The Princess Bride. So if you take all the screenings for one weekend, we sold out our biggest theater, for the weekend. All cumulative 600 seats. We did do that once, if you think about it that way. So people wanted to see The Princess Bride, which is now owned by Disney, and they brought their kids. They came on dates. So people do appreciate it, but I think there's that connection to the movie, and then that our generation has to pass that on to the
I
next. And
I think that that is such a special thing that you are doing. I wish a movie theater near me in New York was doing something like that. That would be absolutely amazing because it's not just getting entertained once, it's like a series of entertainment throughout. And
Mhm.
once you get into your first episode, you go to the second and the third and the fourth. And I think something like that should be passed on to other movie theaters and they should continue, they should do what you're doing. That's absolutely amazing that you guys are doing that.
I'll say we're doing that with Star Wars, but we did it with Harry Potter last at the beginning of the year. We ran one Harry Potter a week so that you could see all seven week to week to week to week, and we had over 200 people every Saturday come into the theater to experience Harry Potter. And you literally got to watch those kids like grow up right in front of you every week. So that was, we kind of did it as like a book club kind of thing where you were going to get to see it. You could come and see whichever one you wanted. You weren't limited to that. And I really thought it would die down after four, but the numbers stayed consistent, five, six, and then we double featured seven. And our host for that event got up and said, this is how many hours we just spent together, how many people have been to every one, and a whole bunch of hands went up. And it became this experience that these people shared together that were there. It was like 30 or 40 had done it every week and come out. And that was something that we gave the audience an experience that they couldn't get anywhere else. To sit in the audience, to give yourself over back to the movie. That's what we're trying to do.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have people call you, and please don't get mad at me because you will you will be called by many movie theaters. I know of quite a few, and I think they should do this in their towns and the cities and so on to build a different kind of a audience and as well as educate the younger ones that there is a better quality than your iPhones and your streaming services. Yes, it's great for business to do the streaming services. I'm not going to deny that.
Yeah.
But if you want to go to a museum for a movie, then go to a movie theater. That has to be explained to them.
The thing that really kind of pushed me in this right direction of passing that on was the Universal monster movies. My father watched those movies with me, and it's a generation thing, and you pass it on to the next generation. So I'll watch those with my son, but I
Yeah,
kind of applied that to some of these older films that we need to run those movies, and hopefully grandparents and parents bring the kids out and pass that on. But the thing with the age gap is that I was 35 when I walked into the classic film committee with 50 plus guys. I'm
yeah,
now approaching 50, and I'm starting to listen to the 21-year-olds who are working with us on programming the Fright Night and the cult films, and they're telling me what their generation is looking for.
yeah.
So I've got to start looking at it of movies like Final Destination, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Jennifer's Body, and what do those movies mean now in relation to when they were released? They may have been moderate successes or hits, but the growth of those films and the impact of those films now, you have to remind yourself that you are getting older and that you have to listen to the next generation that's willing to talk to you.
Yeah.
And you know I embraced a new like committee member. She's 21, and she picked two films from the 80s as the first films that she programmed. And I was shocked because I thought it was going to be stuff from the O's or the early whatever, the 2000s. Nope, she went straight hard, like 80, 81 and 85 or something like that. So I was shocked, but
Right.
that's listening to new voices. And when I first came here, the old guys listened to me, so I've got to be able to turn that around and listen to the next generation behind me.
One thing I'm going to definitely let you know is that your telephone number has been given out to many of the movie theaters across the country, and they will be calling you. But thanks for coming on, and I'll speak to you soon.
Yes, thanks for having me.